by an international traveler of the time, Ibn Fadlan. He and his co-travelers were able to see strange sightings in the sky that scared them immensely. But the local people would laugh at them and say, we see it quite often. Aerial battles, beings fighting each other, strange aircraft, something that's similar to a Star Wars battle scene from a modern movie. Amazing stuff.
Legend has it that the spectacular aerial battles that played out in the skies gave the Arab warriors strength and courage to defeat their enemies during the next day's fight. In the 17th century, Russia experienced a rash of UFO sightings. These objects were described by many who witnessed them as comet-shaped balls of fire.
The most famous one would be the Roswell incident, when a very unusual, huge fiery disc arrived in the area of a northern Russian lake.
One eyewitness submitted the following account.
On this, the 15th day of August in the year 1663, a great crash sounded out from the heavens. Around the stroke of midday, there descended upon Roswell a great ball of fire from the clearest of skies. In front of the fire, there were two fiery beams. It went from south to the west and was about 500 meters away when it vanished. But once again it returned, staying over Roswell for 1 hour and a half, filling all those who saw it with a great dread.
This documented account goes on to detail fishermen scalded by the burning lake, along with glowing fish that flung themselves onto the ground to escape the looming fireball.
Stories, like what they saw over Roswell, were common in pre-revolutionary Russia and outside of Russia in Europe.
When we speak specifically of sightings on the territory of the Soviet Union, percentages are very high, more than 50%, that these UFO sightings would be some sort of fiery, sphere-shaped UFO.
Another extraordinary sighting took place over Moscow in 1892. An eyewitness report was later published in the March 17, 1892 edition of the Russian newspaper Svet.
The pillar of light was pointed straight down to the earth, forming a cone-shaped bundle of rays in the color of ordinary flames. The brightness was considerable and could sometimes be compared to the brightness of an electrical street lamp. The point from which the rays originated didn't move during the whole time, and the rays were visible for 20 to 25 minutes.
While enormous fireballs have been sighted over Russia for centuries, there have been none bigger or more devastating than the event that leveled the Siberian forest of Tunguska in 1908.
And of course it was one of the theories which have to appear that it was not a comet, it was not meteorite, that in reality it was a spacecraft.
Coming up, did a UFO explode over Tunguska?
It is believed that not one but two objects collided over the Tunguska in 1908, equal to many Hiroshimas.
And later, what happened to the wreckage of the 1948 crash at Russia's Roswell?
Hurtling through the solar system, a speck of cosmic dust strikes the Earth. Commonly, these meteors are vaporized by friction in the atmosphere. This is part of the story of one that wasn't. A meteor that landed in 1908 in Siberia with the destructive force of a cannonball.
June 30th, 1908, approximately 7 a.m. The tranquil forest of Tunguska, Siberia, was rocked by a deafening, earth-shattering explosion. The explosion packed the power of a 40-megaton hydrogen bomb. Large trees snapped like tiny twigs as the explosion decimated the dense forest. The effects of the blast were felt as far away as Western Europe and were at first believed to have been caused by a giant meteor smashing into Earth.
My own personal conclusion is that that was Mother Nature showing off, if you will, but that there was no intelligence behind what happened there. It wasn't a rocket, it wasn't a bomb sent to let us know that aliens are watching you, Earthlings.
Literally a catastrophe from outer space.
Yet UFO researchers say if this devastating explosion was the result of a meteor, why were there no craters found in or around Tunguska? It is something scientists to this day have had trouble explaining.
This was, let's call it an explosion, although some people call it an implosion. Whole kilometers of the taiga forest were destroyed. The event itself caused changes in the magnetic field of our planet.
The academic establishment is of the opinion that the Tunguska event was simply a meteor, but there are many facts that speak to the idea that it was, on the contrary, rational guided flight. It made a turn, which is something that a natural object or meteor could not have done.
What was it that could have done that level of devastation and not leave a crater?
Modern-day UFO researchers were not the first to suspect that the Tunguska event was the work of something other than a meteor. Reports suggest that Stalin believed the Tunguska blast was the result of a UFO that had launched some sort of experimental weapon.
Stalin was interested in the acquired information to determine whether UFOs presented an immediate threat to the Soviet security. That's why he used some of his top scientists to give him an assessment. Scientists like Korolev studied UFO materials.
Sergei Korolev, one of the Soviet Union's most celebrated scientists, would go on to become the father of the Russian space program and the man responsible for Sputnik. Along with Stalin, he was determined to solve the mystery of Tunguska.
These observations prompted him to finance an expedition to the place where the Tunguska event happened.
Sergei Korolev used his own money to send an expedition to the Tunguska area in helicopters.
Korolev never met with Stalin. There was some researchers who was looking to prove that Korolev really met with Stalin, but they didn't find any record.
Stalin presumed it really could have been a spaceship. He wanted to find the fragments of that ship, put it back together, and recreate the object for military purposes.
Initially, Korolev found that many of the physical scars left behind at Tunguska were still visible. But the most shocking discovery came in the form of radioactive metallic fragments found at the site. Debris uncharacteristic of any asteroid or meteor.
If you go along the flight path of the Tunguska object and continue past the crash site, you reach an area that Russian ufologists call the Devil's Graveyard. It's a 300 square meter area where not a single plant grows and animals die. It also has a higher than normal radioactivity level. This is a result of what might possibly be a radioactive metallic fragment from the crash.
The radiation levels were there. I mean, meteors don't come down with that level of radiation. So one of the stories is it was a mothership that detonated.
It is believed that Korolev privately told Stalin that the incident at Tunguska had indeed been caused by a UFO, fragments of which were still scattered around the area. However, in his top-secret official report, Korolev is said to have told a much different story. The official party line, Tunguska, was the result of a giant meteor.
The whole point was, if the information serves the bureaucracy, good. If it doesn't, it doesn't exist.
So where were the radioactive fragments from Tunguska taken? Some believe the evidence was transported to Kapustin Yar's underground base, Zitkur.
Different countries have various places where they take their UFO technology. Well, the Soviets basically had one at Zitkur, and it was where they could try to figure out what the technology is and how do we use it. And of course, the security around those bases is essentially shoot-to-kill security.
Was Stalin's team of scientists inside the underground lab of Zitkur using UFO wreckage to advance their fledgling missile defense and space programs?
They had a couple of people, men, at the top of their program who really pushed